All right, today we're joined by Shaun Kimball, co-founder at Nomyx. How are you, Shaun?
Great.
We've had a lot of fun interactions over the past year or so as you've kind of ingrained yourself into the community and our org. We're going to jump around a little bit, setting the table with your background, and then ultimately talking a little bit about Nomyx. Where did the idea of Nomyx come from, and ultimately weave it into your background that enabled you to be a co-founder here?
Yeah, so during COVID, I was running a solar marketing company down in Orange County, and everything was going well. I had a nice little bachelor pad in Newport Beach, living outside of my means, but making it happen every month. And all of a sudden COVID happened, and everything that I thought wasn't going to happen happened, where I couldn't go out and sell solar, and basically realized really quickly that those bills were going to come a lot faster than I anticipated. And interestingly enough, I had this lady from my home ward in San Diego message me on Facebook and goes, "I have 50,000 gallons of hand sanitizer in Mexico City. You think you can sell them?" I was like,
wow.
I've been in this pity party for about 24 hours now. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make it happen. So I hit up my friend in Salt Lake who had a medical supply company here. And I said, I have the bill. And this is at the very, very beginning of COVID. I'm talking January, February 2020.
Yeah.
And he says, of course I can sell it. And I mean, nobody was even making the weird bottles of hand sanitizer at this point. Having a lot of hand sanitizer that was already pre-existing was a thing of the past at that point.
Yeah.
So I sold it, brokered the deal, and I realized really quickly I could do this. And I went out and started tapping into my roots that I had in China. And I said, I'm going to go find some masks. I'm going to have a couple thousand come in and see if I can sell them. Well, I went back to the people I was working with in the solar industry, and I said, hey, give me 10 grand. I think I can double your money in like a few weeks. And they gave me 10 grand. And next thing I know, these masks were coming in and we were selling them before they were even landing.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned just from that one or two transactions, wait, everything's coming from China into LA. I don't need to go buy these masks ahead of time. I just need to go find out where they're going once they land here. And so I went back to my door-to-door roots, and I went down to the LA Fashion District one afternoon, and I just started handing out 20s and 100s to people who were selling ones and twosies of masks. I said, where'd you get those masks at? I want to be able to get, 1,000 to 10,000 at a time. By the end of the day, I was in warehouses in El Monte, California, which is kind of the mecca of where all of the Chinese trade happens, with millions of masks in front of me. And I realized that, hey, there's not a mask shortage going on here. There's just a communication issue. Yeah. And these individuals were bringing in masks by the millions, and they were just distributing them to whoever wanted to pay top dollar for them. What I did was I went out and I just basically made these relationships with these importers. And I said, I'll be your face. I'll go and talk to the hospitals. I'll go talk to the senior care facilities. And I ended up scaling it from a few thousand masks out of the back of my Prius that I was selling to, nurses in Newport Beach, to doing millions and millions of PPE products for about 2.5 years, and ended up generating significant revenue. Margins were pretty good. And at that same bachelor pad, I had a roommate at the time, or not at the time, but previous, who was an aerospace engineer. His name's Zubair Javed. He's now my co-founder at Nomyx. And I went to him and I said, hey, I have some opportunity to invest some cash. I don't want to invest in stocks. I would have already learned that by now. I'm interested in learning about cryptocurrencies and digital assets. So I basically started taking him to like networking events, and I would have this brilliant degen, essentially. This guy basically was buying cryptocurrencies for the last 6 or 7 years, really understood like what crypto was. But I didn't want to get into the crypto space. I wanted to get into the blockchain and digital asset space, tokenization, and what that looked like. And so we would go around from networking event to networking event, just trying to like figure out where we, kind of fell in the space. And I realized really quickly that I had the smartest guy in the room everywhere I went. Mm-hmm. And not only was he the smartest guy in the room, we were taking people who had projects that were 3-6 months old. He was diagnosing all their problems and giving them solutions on the spot. I started to realize, wow, we could really do something with this. And we started consulting companies here in Orange County and, the Silicon Slopes essentially, and helping them build a roadmap to what blockchain and digital assets meant to them. And why that's important is because we didn't go out and seek investors. We just went out and made it happen. And to this day, we've generated close to $1 million in revenue, and we haven't taken a single investment dollar from a capital partner. What we have done is, though, we've gone out and built a turnkey solution for businesses to be able to bring their assets or their operations on chain. And essentially what Nomyx does is we're an asset agnostic tokenization platform that allows for mid to large institutions to bring their traditional assets that they're currently trading in their traditional fashion and use blockchain to be able to remove the intermediaries that they're spending tons of money on and be able to streamline those transactions.
Interesting. So on your website, you've got real estate and private equity. What's a deal? You don't have to mention names or companies, but just a deal for the layman of how you guys are tokenizing something.
Sure.
You're getting paid for it.
So we're definitely doing well in the consumer lending space, and we're a pioneer. I would say there's not a lot of companies that are tokenizing loans. How we're able to do so in a compliant manner is we came up with this solution called Nomyx ID. And what Nomyx ID is a smart contract based identity solution that allows traditional financial institutions to be able to practice the same measures of compliance that they do today in a decentralized world. We're basically giving a trustless environment a sense of trust. And the reason that you haven't seen the bigger financial institutions adopt this technology at a rapid clip is not because they don't want to. Okay. I know that they do. I sit in the rooms with them. I listen to their dreams and aspirations of how they want to apply this technology to their current, trading mechanisms that they're doing today. The reason that they're not is because they haven't figured out the identity and how that applies in a trustless environment. And that's what we've solved. And so today it's really interesting because a small little company like Nomyx here out of, Salt Lake City, Utah is in the room with some of the biggest financial institutions in the world. And if you would have told me a year ago that we would be hanging out with the Fidelities and the Franklin Templetons and the JP Morgans, I would have thought you were probably pretty crazy. The reason we've been able to get in those rooms is because those same institutions are trying to figure out how they create digital identities in a decentralized manner. And that's what we've actually accomplished in the bootstrap fashion. Very
cool. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but I'm always interested in like what you're describing is kind of passe for you because you understand it really well and it's what you do. But financial transactions for 8 billion people on planet Earth with cars and houses and stocks and bonds, it always seems to me like it's on the razor's edge. I remember the first trade I did with Fidelity because I used to have a stockbroker and I was like in my teens and you'd call and say, I want to buy 100 shares of Nike, right? And I was even amazed at that point, right? Because you'd seen movies in the 80s or 90s like Wall Street and there's computers and fast trading and all of that. I'm like, who's keeping track of all this? And then, like let's say you need $10,000 for a car. You're, in a lower income bracket and, you pay it off and they say, no, actually you still owe 3,000. Like there's all sorts of ways that you could get screwed or you forget to carry the zero or the decimal points in the wrong place. And I'm always just amazed it works. Yeah.
Call it
fat thumb it. And then it's like, well, here goes 100 hours of like emails back and forth and letters in the mail and all of that. Because without this backing and financial system doesn't work this world of ours, right?
Correct.
So you've mentioned some big names that are handling trillions of dollars of transactions and all sorts of stuff from a grandma and her pension to high frequency trading, all of that type of stuff. So where do you guys live in this massive, complicated ecosystem?
So all we are, think about Nomyx as like the Salesforce to CRMs we are to tokenized assets or digital assets. All we're doing is providing a software layer in the middle that allows for these traditional institutions to do exactly what they're doing today in a digital era. And it's interesting. I'll go back to the PPE days of SOS Supply. I remember vividly having to always beat these 2:00 wire timelines. And if you didn't get your money wired over by 2 p.m., business is done for the day. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on, it's 2024. Yeah. At the time, it was 2022. And if I didn't get my money to the bank in time by 2:00, you're telling me I can't do business for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
Like, that's archaic. Or when you go to the Wynn Casino and you check into a room and they're saying, hey, thanks for staying with us. You spent a ton of money. By the way, your deposit's not coming back for the next 2 weeks. You're like, yeah. Are you kidding me? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's strategic. We know they're doing things with your money. The other is they're still trying to apply the old archaic rules to today's, financial, world. And it just is not going to continue that way. And to be quite honest with you, I think the institutions have gotten by for a long time using those mechanisms. And they're realizing, hey, instead of just waiting to return that money or to transact that money over a 48-hour period, why don't we use it to our advantage? And I think that's why blockchain is going to take shape here in the next couple of years, and why smart contracts are going to really facilitate transactions, is because now the banks and the asset managers saying, hey, I can flip this money 5 times over. Who cares about waiting 48 hours, on the back end? I'd rather just take that money and start spinning it up and making it work for me that way. Yeah. So that's where I see the early adopters taking shape. If you look at it, today you have JP Morgan, Franklin Templeton, Fidelity. They're all doing this. They're all using blockchain. They're all using smart contracts. They're just not telling anybody. And they're doing it in walled gardens. Why? Because they haven't figured out the identity portion, which is where we come into play. And why we're in these rooms with these institutions is because they want to be able to use our identity protocol to allow them to issue these assets in a compliant manner without getting dinged by the SEC.
Yeah. And you keep talking about identity. Is that the identity of the person on the other side of the wire or computer screen?
It goes on both sides, KYB and KYC. For the most part, the institutions want to know who their client is, right? And right now, the way that blockchain identities are being applied is still pretty archaic. You're having to either do a whitelist or you're doing a Google form, and it's just not really secure. Mm-hmm. What we're doing is we're making it so that on real time, these smart contracts that we're creating are being attached to the identity of the investors, and those attestations are being updated real time. Okay. And that allows for these institutions to release these assets in a marketplace and have them be invested in a compliant manner. Gotcha. And that is a huge pain point that we figured out just by going out and talking to our competitors. I mean, it's kind of interesting, eventually as we continue to have discussions and capital raises, we put together a pitch deck, and we have a few of our competitors that are on our competitive landscape who are hitting us up to use our identity protocol.
Oh, that's good for you. Since the dawn of money being invented, people have always been trying to either counterfeit it or steal it or do things that are nefarious, right? So blockchain and tokenization, we're talking about more of the sides that benefit from like these behemoth financial institutions, but for Joe Public, it's also good.
Right.
Right.
I think the biggest missing piece to commerce today is trust. Yeah. Right. If you drive up the 15 freeway, on both sides of the freeway, you see just a ton of third-party intermediary companies that are completely developed to provide trust in transactions, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the biggest names in this space or in the Silicon Slopes ecosystem are third-party intermediaries that are completely there for the sole purpose to provide some type of trust in that transaction. Yeah. Some fat thumbing is still going on there. Right. And ultimately, what Nomyx wants to do and what we're building is that ability not to get rid of the third-party intermediaries, but to eliminate the ones that aren't necessary.
Yeah.
And if you have a distributed, trusted ledger that allows for both parties to have access with trust and transparency and identity, you don't need all of them. You just need probably a third of them.
Gotcha.
And I think there's a lot of costs that these financial institutions are spending that they would like to eliminate if they could, but currently they can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if, somebody shows up in a Bentley and they've got their entourage and Lamborghinis and they say, I want to buy your house. I'll send you the check tomorrow. You'd probably say no, right? Like 100%. They could have rented those. If Warren Buffett shows up in his Lincoln Town Car and says, I'll buy the house, check's coming tomorrow, you'd say, okay.
Yeah, I'll give you those terms.
Yeah, deal. Because and trust Warren Buffett, right? Like, that's not what he does.
Yeah.
But dudes in Lambos, that's all smoke and mirrors, theoretically.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so essentially the reason why I wanted to be a part of this startup was because I have felt that there's a lot of opportunity that goes to the wrong people because they put up a facade, and that facade never really had a way to validate. And then all of a sudden someone got this investment that you're like, man, that guy does not deserve that investment, or man, that guy does not deserve that opportunity. Or wow, if they only knew the truth, they wouldn't want to deal with those parties, right?
Yeah.
For me, I've always wanted to be in this like world of where trust was the key focus and everybody could just do business.
Yeah.
And I really haven't seen anything in the world today that's allowed for that until I watched this TED Talk. Essentially, this gentleman in Morristown, New Jersey was talking about blockchain simplified and how it was going to apply to businesses and what that distributed ledger system looked like. And my eyes just like lit up. And I remember like sending that link to everybody and anybody that wanted to listen. Like, guys, this is what I've been looking for. Like if we could just have this level of trust, so many other things could happen and nobody's feelings would get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. And for billions of people, it'd be one less thing to worry about. Right?
Yeah.
Because it is a big worry of, I'm a little guy, they're a big guy. I hope this goes well.
I mean, look at what the banks spend on an annual basis just to take care of fraud.
Yeah.
All of the different things that they're spending money on because they don't have that source of truth.
Yeah. Yep. It goes back to like basic principles, right? Like if you trust the group you're with or you trust the community you're with, it's a lot easier and a lot better. And you can focus on other things in life.
Yeah.
Which are great. You sent me a little video a couple, month and a half, 2 months ago. You were in Dubai and it was raining and you guys were in some tunnel and it looked like a Cybertruck, but the water was in the truck.
Yeah.
How did that end up? Did the truck keep going?
Well,
there's a question that will eventually get to it. I'm interested in the
okay,
truck
so
market.
one thing you should know about Dubai, and we mentioned that you've had some experience there, is there's not a lot of places in the world that has the element of fantastic service given like the service staff in Dubai.
Yeah.
Like if it's an Uber, someone waiting at your table, any of those service providers are fantastic. And, there's not a lot of places in this world that do better than Mexico, all-inclusive resorts. Like those guys kill it when it comes to service. But when I went to Dubai, it's like, man, this is amazing. And the reason I bring that up is because what happened was early on in the morning at about 8 a.m., I was sitting in the Residence Inn Marriott in Dubai eating my breakfast, and I get this weather alert that's saying, we're canceling schools, the federal government's shut down, stay at home. Well, I had traveled however many miles to go to this conference. There was no way in heck that I was going to be sitting in my hotel room all day. So I just said, forget it. I'm getting an Uber and I'm going to go to this conference. Well, I get to the conference. Everything's fine. Along the way, you could tell that you probably should have stayed home. And there was already water up to people's doors, cars that were on the sides completely stalled out. I still go to the conference. As I'm leaving, or as I want to leave the conference, I quickly realized that there's about 400 conference goers and 0 Ubers.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be sitting in this hotel all night in the lobby. I'm going to get home somehow. And so I went out to the valet area and I saw this Model Y car. I'm going to call it car for now. unloading suitcases. And I said, I'm getting in this car. I don't care. And I'm just going to pay this guy whatever it takes to get home. He goes, well, where are you going? I said, wherever you're going. He goes, all right, well, I got to give this guy a ride to the Renaissance, and then I'll give you a ride to wherever you're going. Well, I realized really quickly that maybe I should have stayed at the hotel, because as we were leaving the hotel, we got stuck and you couldn't see the curbs. You couldn't see anything. We're talking water up to the doors. And the funny thing about it was, I have a Tesla, and I know that there's tons of little Easter eggs or whatever that Elon puts into these cars, and you don't really know about them until he just kind of presents them to you. And I start hearing water bubbling. I'm thinking, oh, this is when Elon turns on like the water resistant, factor to the car, and he's sealing it up. Well, no, actually, as a matter of fact, it was real water. It was coming into the car, and now I'm lifting my feet up above the seat to protect my computer and my shoes from getting wet. This guy would not stop driving me until he got me to his hotel.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to pull the eject button 17 different times along the way. Every single light on in the car. The car's full of water. This gentleman took me all the way back to my hotel, and I couldn't be. I wish that he could hear this. Like, to this day, I'm extremely grateful for him.
That's awesome. Good for him. And good for the car for making it.
Yeah.
But you were there for like a blockchain.
Yeah,
conference.
it's Dubai Blockchain Week.
So those are always always interesting when like the industry's there, kind of inhaling their own exhaust, right? Because you guys are all believers and stuff. So afterwards, I assume everyone's kind of thinking like, well, yeah, I already kind of like all this stuff. I learned a lot. It was fun. But damn it, the rest of the world needs to kind of learn this. So you guys have your business, which needs to operate and run efficiently. You've got to get customers and have the margins good, but you also have to educate people. How do you guys go about educating people? You can't do it one-off. Like, this is a good opportunity here to...
Yeah, this is great. I mean, to be quite frank with you, it seems like that's a lot of what we've been doing over the last year. Some of our clients are paying for that education. Others are extracting it out of us with the hope and a prayer that eventually they can bring a use case to us. Mm-hmm. In the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, you don't really need to educate asset managers. They know they're either getting a roadmap ready, they're planning it, or they're executing it. In the United States, there's a lot of leeriness around regulation. I don't blame them. Gensler's done this whole regulation by enforcement trick for the last however long. He can't even seem to get it right when he does.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's pushed away a lot of the heavy hitters here in Utah, especially. Like, we don't really get a lot of traction here, unfortunately. And that's just because people are nervous, right? Overseas, there's regulatory clarity. People have an understanding of what's happening, where the roadmap's taking them, and we're able to go out there and execute. But I do believe that education is the biggest missing link that we're missing right now, and how Nomyx can help out today. So if you're a business out there and you're hearing this and you're wondering, how does blockchain apply to your industry? That's how we got our start. We're here to help. We're here to educate people, and we proudly do so. And we've been more than happy to take any call to help you understand how this technology applies to what you're doing today. We love those that are ready to take action and move forward, or create a roadmap and have us help them through that roadmap. But I would say education is a lot of what we do today.
Yeah. I would imagine so. And, eventually you'll look back and be like, yeah, it was all worth it. I had to say the same thing 5 trillion times, but it was all worth it.
I love it, though, because for me, I don't have a finance background. I wanted to make sure that I'm always in an industry that's making me uncomfortable. I did it with door-to-door sales. Door-to-door sales is the most underrated opportunity out there. Why? Because you're getting paid extreme amounts of money to grow and to become a better person along the way. There's not a lot of opportunities that are out there that pay that significant.
Yeah.
I don't care how old you are. If you're 50, if you're 18, if you have the opportunity to go out and sell door to door, go do it. Why? Because you're going to get paid handsomely, but you're also going to grow exponentially. Mm-hmm. I did it for a decade. I took what I have inherited from all these years of being told no, and I parlayed it into an amazing opportunity. My role with Nomyx isn't to go out and talk about finance. It's not to talk about tokenization of assets. My role is to get us in front of whoever we want to talk to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do what I do today at the speed that I'm able to accomplish where we're at as a company without that experience that I gathered pounding on people's doors. And for me, I'm forever grateful for it.
Yeah, very cool. And I would agree, having never done it outside of talking a little bit of Jesus, I got enough scars from that one.
Sure.
But I always respect the folks that knock on my door and there's going to go do that 500 more times.
Yeah.
Like, good for you.
Oh yeah.
Get it going, and everything will be easier after this. Well, thank you so much for joining Silken Slope Show, Shaun. Enjoyed the stories. I've been enjoying the journey so far. It's fun just to bump into you and hear little periodic updates. And for me, I'm watching your timeline and like, oh, there's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Head down. We're not taking no for an answer. We'll see you at the top.
There you go. Thank you, Shaun. Appreciate it.
Yep.